Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm your host, Cheryl Hentz, here on a rainy Thursday night with our city manager, Mark Rohloff. And he usually comes in about this time of year, I think, don't you?
Hopefully not always on rainy nights, but yeah, happy to be here, Cheryl.
Well, and it's ironic that it should be raining because we were just talking about water.
Yeah.
But yeah, typically, I mean, I like it if you can come in more frequently, but I know, you've got a lot of demands on your time. And but I really like having you come in this time of year because this is when the city starts going through budget hearings and all of that. And so that's at the top of my list. Where are we at with budget hearings? And do you have any sense yet of what our wonderful tax bills are going to look like in December?
Well, Council, we've been having some budget work sessions submittal of the budget to the Council. Council is actually going to be getting the budget on October 12th. But the Council did give us some fairly good direction about things they wanted to see. And the tax bill was at the top of that list. They've asked that we keep the limit to 4 to 4.5%, and I think we're going to get there. That's on the levy itself. The assessed value has gone up, so the rate increase won't be anywhere near that because with everything going on in the housing markets, we've seen an increase in values. But we're going to probably be in that 4 to 4.5% range, I'm anticipating.
So what you're saying then, I want to make sure I understand it, you're saying 4 to 4.5% increase in city taxes.
Yeah, and that's just city taxes.
That's just city.
I would say for a house that's valued at $150,000, probably looking at an increase of roughly $40 a year.
Okay, and then of course we get the county and we get the school district and the state, and before you know it, we're up, 10, 12, 15%. So
well, no, the percentage itself won't necessarily go up because our if we were the only ones going up 4%, then you would be much less than 4%. If everybody goes up 4%, then it's about 4%. The county, everybody but the city does it differently the way the state rules are. The county does it on equalized value. Well, the equalized value, which is the market value, that's gone up quite a bit this year. So you're going to see a big reduction in the rate. But if your property value has been valued higher, then it's going to adjust accordingly. So
yeah, let's talk about that a little bit because I don't think that everybody, and I don't understand all the little nuances of it either. I know that when we have development in the city, that is supposed to help offset some of the tax increases. But I also know that when you put in more apartment buildings, more this, more that, that's more infrastructure that has to be put in. There's more wear and tear on roads. And so it has a way of offsetting each other a little bit. But let's talk about, I don't know, pick any development that has happened this year or talk about all the development going in along Oshkosh Avenue and how that works to sort of offset or play a factor in our property taxes.
Well, any time single-family residential development from a taxing standpoint is probably the least efficient because while we love that because that's more neighbors and more people like you and me, it does put a greater demand on services. When you redevelop an area like Oshkosh Avenue, you're not adding extra infrastructure and you're adding to value. So those are actually good things. Probably one of the more efficient is more multifamily and industrial because industrial typically uses has the least demand on services, and at least with multifamily residential, it's more compact, so you get more value per square foot. So you're getting more tax per square foot. Now, that's getting really technical, but it's important that everybody understands. It's like we all love to see new homes and everything, but technically those are the ones that end up costing us the most when you factor in what they pay in taxes and the demand they ultimately place on services. But a great example with Oshkosh Avenue is no extra infrastructure and good value. So we're really looking forward to that development occurring.
And Oshkosh Corp, they required extra infrastructure, but that's their deal. That's not right on Oshkosh Avenue. And there was a separate TIF for that, right?
Right. We did separate those two TIF districts, the tax increment financing districts. So the one that we did specifically for Oshkosh Corporation will take care of whatever things we were doing over there. And then the rest of the areas, what we really are looking forward to, because we went down as far as the U-Haul, the old Kmart area, and the idea eventually would be to accumulate enough tax increment that we can do things like redo the Sawyer Street, Oshkosh Avenue intersection, which universally is agreed that we need to do something there. And I always like to point out it won't be a roundabout. Because
I've told people that too.
Yeah, thank you.
There's no room for a roundabout there. You've got the bridge, and if you put a roundabout in there, you would have a nightmare. You could not logistically do it.
Right. The minute you put up the bridge, you take away any efficiency a roundabout would create. We have bridges a good 7 months out of the year, so no, we would end up putting together a traditional cross intersection. We'd line up Rainbow Drive and Sawyer Street to connect straight with each other along with Oshkosh Avenue. Much more traditional, more common sense. But we got to get a little more development, but we're making progress. We're really pleased with a lot of the development we've got going in there. The Town Hill Suites is probably the next thing that's going to open up over there, and that'll add another hotel to the area, which is good for that entire area. Oshkosh Corporation, they're not doing a lot of hotel business right now, but the idea is to get people in from Oshkosh Corporation, so that hotel will do wonderfully once things get going.
I know one of the arguments I've heard from people about the hotel is that people said, we don't have full hotels now, but this one is a little bit different. This is like kind of the first of its kind here in the Oshkosh area. These are, well, I'll let you tell the story too, but I know this because I just recently interviewed our new community development director for a magazine article, and she and I were talking about this, and the hotel is going to be different in that, they've got little kitchens in there, and so it's different.
The term is extended stay, and so to the degree that somebody, say, for example, comes in for a week-long training with Oshkosh Corporation, they're not always just going to be going out to a restaurant every night to eat. So the kitchens and all those features make it a little more homey, I guess. So that's why they're looking at that type of thing. So that's a different product for the market. There's always going to be competition for hotels, and I think that sort of gets everybody to up their game. We know that, with events and that, we do well during events, but getting tourists to come here is part of what the Convention and Visitors Bureau does. We're working really closely with them to make sure that we can do things to make other reasons for people to come visit. I think part of the investment in the public museum is we're not going to generate a bunch of people coming to the town just for the museum. But if we can add those little visitor experiences, that creates a groundswell of amenities that people say, well, if we stay here an extra day, we can do EAA, we can do this, we can take bike tours, visit the public museum for the Titanic exhibit. I had to get the commercial in there. But things like that. So people can create a whole vacation out of a variety of things they can do here.
Sure. There are a lot of things in Oshkosh that you can do. You could literally come here for 5 or 6 days and find plenty of things to do. So now you mentioned something about the museum. Is there something else going on at the museum or doing something else at the museum?
You're just feeding it to me so I can do a commercial message.
Well, I'm not trying to.
We're finishing up the Titanic exhibit, which has been a real success. And now our assistant director, Anna Canizo, had a relationship with somebody who has connections with Rosemary Clooney's estate.
Oh.
And they have a ton of nostalgic pieces from the movie White Christmas. And so we're going to have a White Christmas exhibit during the holiday season. and it's the dresses and the different costumes and props and things like that. And we're, from a marketing standpoint, we're going to be working with veterans groups because the theme of the movie was helping out the old general. So they're doing some promotions to attract veterans to come in as well. So it's going to start right after Thanksgiving and continue. We might even be able to extend it into January and maybe even into February. But I think the creativity of our museum staff to put together an exhibit that has appeal to the masses, and then they can come and they can see our local history, the People of the Waters exhibit, which is just wonderful. And doing those things, I'm really proud of the museum for their creativity. And we have a new director starting to replace Brad Larson in December. She's walking in at the perfect time. She gets the White Christmas exhibit on her first week on the job. So, she'll have it easy.
At least until that's over.
Yeah.
And for anyone who's not aware of who Rosemary Clooney is, I mean, she's an old-time actress, but isn't she she's some kind of relative to George Clooney, right?
She is the aunt of George Clooney.
Okay.
My wife is a freak about White Christmas, the movie, so I know way too much. So it's good that you ask these questions because I'll just give you, details about the movie.
I knew that there was some kind of relationship there, but I couldn't remember what it was.
Yeah.
So okay, so she was.
Rosemary is George's nephew. So yeah, for people younger than us,
George is
the guy. Yeah.
George is Rosemary's nephew.
Yeah.
Not the other way around.
Rosemary's aunt.
I'd like to see that trick though. That would be very good. So okay, let's talk about housing. I mean, we've kind of touched on that a little bit. One thing, I mean, it's great that we've got all these new apartment buildings going in, and they have some pretty high price tags attached to them, I think. I don't know that I could afford to live in some of these places. Thankfully, though, some people can. And I know that, like the Brio building down at 155 Jackson, that's above the new food co-op, they're full. I mean, they're full. And so that's a great thing. But what are we doing about affordable housing for people who are low to moderate income folks who can't afford those big price tags? And there's nothing wrong with those. I'm not trying to slam anybody who has big price tags, but we got to have some affordable housing for people who don't have that kind of a budget.
Your question is very appropriate, and I'm going to split hairs a little bit just to help illustrate your point, but I'll be a little contrarian with you.
Oh boy, here we go.
We did a market analysis, and we don't have a low to moderate income housing problem. But what we do have, and we have to recognize this, is there are definitions at the federal level. Mm-hmm. We have a very low and extremely low affordable housing problem. That is a fact. We also have a lack of very high-end housing, and Brio doesn't even get into that category. So we're lacking housing at a very high level and at a very low level, and we have to address both of those. The challenge is creating the right market for that to happen, and that's a real challenge, because to make it very affordable for very low and extremely low, you're getting into what the Housing Authority does, which is you can no more than 30% of your income. Well, if you're making $100,000 a year, 30% of your income, pretty easy. That's $30,000 a year. Mm-hmm. You can afford a lot of housing at $30,000 a year. Yeah. We aren't even offering that. I mean, that's $2,500 a month. We don't have $2,500 a month housing, but we also don't have somebody making $20,000 a year. And what's a third of that, or 30% of that? That's only $6,000 a year. That's $500 a month. Yeah. And we don't have that, and that's the real challenge. So we've done an analysis that says we really need to focus on how do we address that very low and extremely low. I wish I had a magical answer for you, Cheryl, but I really don't. But the TIF districts that we have address low-income housing, and that seems, when you say low-income housing, it's addressing the issues that you raise. But the real issue is the very low and extremely low, and we got to work on that.
Well, I have a thought, and it's a big problem, clearly. But I think that, not just in Oshkosh, but I think across this country, as more and more businesses allow their people to work from home, we're going to see buildings start to just close up. I mean, there's not going to be a need for them. I don't know what kind of a situation we have like that here in Oshkosh, if we've got, buildings that will not be in use, but why not, work with these owners of these buildings to somehow incentivize them to do more Section 8 housing or something along those lines to help meet these needs that we have.
I think we're keeping an eye on where the needle is moving, because I think it's too early to really say you're right or you're not right. I don't know if you're right or not right yet, and that's the real challenge. But I think there's a big concern that our office building's going to become kind of a relic. I don't think we're there yet. We know that we have demand for housing. There's no question about that. Right now, there's demand for housing at so many different levels, and we have to address those things.
Yeah.
I can see that happening. We also have a homeless issue we need to take care of.
Yes.
Council's very aware of that, and they've tasked me with that as a major priority of theirs, and I'm working on that. And we've got a few things going on, and hopefully we can address that. But you got to, once they can move on to independent living, it's got to be affordable for them.
Sure. And I know that Day by Day Warming Shelter is looking at doing some kind of a facility year round. Since you brought it up, is there any movement in that direction? Are they looking? I mean, trying to find a site in the downtown area is tough.
Yeah, actually, I'm happy to report I've been working closely with Day by Day. We've identified a location. It's actually owned by the Oshkosh Winnebago County Housing Authority.
Oh.
It's adjacent to Court Tower, so it's at the corner of CP and Broad Street.
Okay.
They are the plan is that we, the city, using federal community development block grant dollars, would purchase the property from the Housing Authority, or actually our redevelopment authority, because our redevelopment authority is, for lack of a better term, they're our real estate holding company. And then we in turn would deed it over to Day by Day. They're undergoing a fundraising effort to get money sufficient for about a $3.5 million facility. I've informally committed, and I've stuck my neck out a little bit on this, but I've advised the council members, I think this is important, that the American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA funds, the fund monies from the feds, clearly qualifies for something like this, but looking at putting $1 million towards that $3.5 million price tag. That area is nearby for many services that the homeless community seeks out. It's close to transportation. It's not right at the transit center, but it's easy walking distance. It's close to County Human Services. It's close to other areas where they can be served. So we want to make sure that the guests at Day by Day are close to the services that they most use. So that's a location that's been identified. I expect that within the next month or so that you will see a formal application from Day by Day for that facility. And then it'll go through that process. So a couple things. The real estate deal has to occur, like I explained. They have to get the site plan approved, and they need the funding. So the $1 million that I would be proposing from the city's ARPA funds, they're seeing if the county might chip in some money and some private donors. And I know they've been doing some fundraising since day one, but Cheryl, that facility that they have over at St. Paul's, it was only intended to be a temporary facility, and that was in 2010. It's been 11 years.
It's hard to believe it's been that long.
Isn't it?
Actually.
But I think we have a responsibility, and I think COVID just pointed out what happens when the facilities just aren't sufficient to meet the ongoing needs.
Right.
And the whole idea is to move our homeless population into the next level. And so we're taking a couple other approaches, and I'm working with some other nonprofits to to what we call the continuum of housing, from you're completely homeless and darn near hopeless to you're finally independent and you're paying for your own housing and everything in between.
Sure. So has Day by Day actually kicked off their $3.5 million capital campaign?
I would say the short answer is yes. The long answer is I think Molly Butz, the director of Day by Day, ought to be a guest on your show and talk about those things. But they are actively doing it, and they've raised money over the years, but they never have the location. Now there's a location identified. Not everybody agrees with it, though. I got to tell you, there's some people that don't like its proximity to the Leach Amphitheater. But I politely point out that go behind the Leach Amphitheater on any night in the summer, and there's a homeless encampment there.
Yeah.
So it's not that they're not there. We need a place to invite them and make them feel safe and secure, and then provide the services that I know Molly and her staff are willing to do, to say, what can we do to help you move out of homelessness to the next stage in your life? What are you doing about jobs? Are you drug and alcohol counseling? Are you getting it? All those things. We know that it's not just about homelessness. There's so many other complicating factors that have to be addressed. So partnering with human services at the county level. The county does that, not the city. We got to get them to all the broad level of services that they need so that they can get out of homelessness. And Molly would be a great interview on your show.
Yeah, she's on my list. You know, I had all these people lined up for last year, and then of course COVID hit, and we couldn't do it, of course.
A final statistic for your point.
All right.
Molly reports to me that 40% of her guests are employed.
Okay.
40%. So these folks are not, it's not a Skid Row type of thing. These people are actively working and have pride in their work. So those are the people I think you're referring to, the people that, that can't afford housing. So we need to create that continuum so they can move from Day by Day into another type of level of housing, and whether it's Section 8 like you were talking about, and then eventually getting themselves in a situation where we can help them with whatever issues that they may have that's also contributing to their homelessness or whatever situation they're in, to finally get to a point where they're writing their own check for their rent.
Yeah, absolutely. So, gosh, now we've jumped all over the place, and so many of these things were questions that I had. So let's talk about this $1 million ARPA money. How much did we get from the federal government?
We received, or we've been allocated $20.5 million. We received half of it. Okay. And we have until the end of 2024 to identify where it's going to be spent, and then by the end of 2026 to spend it itself.
2026, it all has to be spent.
Yeah, but we have to pretty much allocate it and say it's for this project by the end of 24.
Well, I think putting $1 million into, that's almost a third of what Day by Day is looking to raise. So I think that's fine. But, I really would like to see some of this money, Mark, go towards some of these things with water. Water is always on my mind. It is. When we redid we as the city, when we redid the water tower down along Jackson or in that area, it was, if memory serves me correctly, you said that it cost about $250,000 just to paint that, right?
Just to paint it, yeah.
Yes, just to paint it.
But that was a brand new tower.
Well, yes, but still, I mean, whether you're painting an existing tower or a brand new tower, it has to be painted, and it has to be primed or whatever it is they do, so painting is painting.
Yeah.
Now, we always are doing things with water retention ponds or detention. What are they? Detention or retention?
Depends. If it holds water all the time, it's more of a retention, but if it's dry and it holds water in peaks, it's detention.
So we've got both.
So detention is D for dry. If it's a dry pond, it's generally a detention pond.
That's a good way of.
The good way to
maybe I'll
dry,
remember it next
the
time.
R, I don't know what the retention. I don't have the answer for you on that one, but basically
well, I hope
D
I
for
can
dry.
retain that. So we have both in the city,
Yeah.
do we? Okay. All right. And so, you know, we need that stuff to help control flooding. You know, we're constantly having to redo things because the federal government says you have to do this. You know, the federal government, the state government, they give you all these mandates, but then they're unfunded mandates, and they leave it up to guys like you and the council to sort out how in the hell you're going to pay for this stuff. And so I think, you know, some of this $20.5 million, I think, should go to help offset some of these expenses that otherwise you, me, my crew, every other taxpayer in this city has to come up with, because people can't keep affording this stuff, especially if they're on a fixed income. And you know that. I don't have to tell you that. You know that. But I fear at some point we're going to be pricing people out of their homes. And that's a real concern, because someone's lived in a home for 30, 40, 50 plus years, and all of a sudden they can't afford to stay there anymore because they can't afford the water bill, or they can't afford the taxes because they're being priced out. I mean, can't we put some of this money towards some of these things to offset what we as taxpayers would typically have to pay?
The short answer is yes. Last week, the council gave us some general direction through a resolution that said they would like to see 75% of the proceeds from our ARPA allocation to be used on infrastructure. It didn't specifically get into the detail that you talk about, but you covered a bunch of other things, and we could go off on multiple tangents with that.
Yeah.
But you know,
Well,
generally,
infrastructure can cover a lot too.
Infrastructure can cover a ton.
You know.
It was interesting. I was so proud of the public with some of the input they gave us, because you wonder sometimes, do they understand a certain issue? And the public, there was a lot of comments from the public on, we need to address lead water pipes. And I was like, wow, they really, they picked up on this issue.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure some of it had to do with all the nonsense that went on in Flint, Michigan, but you know, anything that is older than 60 years old is probably a lead water pipe. That's just the fact. That's just what. So that was one of the issues that was raised, and so that we really picked up on that. And the state's been giving us funds to replace some lead services that go into people's properties. We're giving a $1,500 grant to people. It's a matching grant, 50-50. So if it costs you $3,000, we'll pay $1,500 of it. And the whole idea is we want to encourage you. Now, part of it is it's the law, but people can't afford it, especially in the older areas. So that $1,500 grant is intended to make it easier. I don't know how long that program's going to last, and if it runs out, we need to have something to backfill it, because we're nowhere near done on addressing our lead services. So that's one of the things that I was proud that the public recognized it, and our staff is like, if we run out of state money, Mark, it wasn't need, we gotta do this, Mark. So when I hear a gotta do, it's on my radar.
Yeah. Where is the state coming up with the money?
The state, I think, has been identifying general funds that within the state budget, and they've been giving us probably anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000 a year, I believe. So, and we've been
that's
spending.
good. It's about time.
We've been spending every penny every year on that, and I think I predict that they will probably throw some of their ARPA money that same way. We can't count on it, but I predict that's what will happen.
How much did the state get?
Oh, I honestly don't know the answer to that, but 2 weeks ago, the state announced that they had a program of $200 million statewide of ARPA funds that they were going to allocate. That's not everything, but it was for local governments, for projects. So, you know, infrastructure is certainly in the wheelhouse for that.
Oh, God. You know, I hear these, and this is not a slam on you, Mark, but I hear these, you know, $3.5 million, bless you, several hundred million the state has, blah, 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 and yet, look at us. We're struggling to pay our bills. water bills, utility bills, other utility bills, property taxes, whatever. We're all struggling to pay it, and yet I hear hundreds of millions of dollars that the state has and the city is getting, and it's crazy. And look at what the federal government has doled out during this last year and a half, and thank God that they did, because we'd be really in a world of hurt. But God, I mean, nobody is really getting any better from a standpoint of tax relief or whatever. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I understand. To give you some perspective, this isn't going to make you happy, because it's going to depress you even more. But
okay,
we're getting $20 million from the feds. We are redoing Algoma Boulevard next year through the university area, Wisconsin Avenue to Congress Avenue. As it's almost exactly 1 mile. Mm-hmm. That project's going to cost us $10 million. So we could do 2 miles of road if we took all of the ARPA money and said, let's just do roads. Now, granted, Algoma is a fairly wide street compared to others, but it will do 10 million would do 1 mile of Algoma. So we'd basically do 2 miles of road, and our money would be gone. So it sounds like a lot of money, but it can go like that.
Well, when you're talking about roads, yes. I don't know, bridges too, they're not cheap. And that's why years ago, when this came before the council and they had a choice of either fixing the bridges or redoing them so that they would go up high enough that they were no longer drawbridges, I thought that was the best answer, and those people on the council just did not like doing that. Now, I thought that was personally a pretty stupid, short-sighted decision on their part. Why would you not want to build a bridge that goes high enough up over the water that you don't have to have bridges opening and closing all the time? You're going to save wear and tear on those bridges. Or would you rather spend money on fixing these things every however many years when the mechanicals wear out? I mean, to me, it was a no-brainer, but I don't know. The no-brainer came from some of the decisions that the council made.
Well, the state owns the bridges currently. After the next bridge project, on whatever bridge you pick, the state is turning them over to us. So the point of, what do you want to inherit? Because really that's what's going to happen. The state's going to say, what do you want to inherit? Do you want to inherit a bridge where you're going to be paying for not just they're going to do it one more time and then they're done. So Jackson Street, they've just notified us that they want to start talking about bridge reconstruction in 2027, I believe it is. So they're looking at, the issue is going to be revisited as you described, but whatever the state ultimately does after that bridge is done, we get the keys. And so do we want to pay for the cost of a bridge tender to open and close the bridges and monitor all that, or do we go with something that we don't have to pay that ongoing cost? That ongoing cost is about $160,000 a year just for a bridge tender.
But I thought most of the bridges went with sort of an automated thing, because I don't see a little person, well, not little, but I don't see a person sitting in there anymore, opening and closing bridges.
They're going back and forth about, can the bridge tender monitor more than one bridge? Mm-hmm. And the answer is yes. But it's the ongoing cost to monitor all those bridges is still $160,000 a year.
Does that take into account the wear and tear on the mechanicals?
No,
that's
not at
just
all.
For the person to...
Just for the bridge tender, because bridge tender's got to be there from in the summer, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week. So it's not just one person, it's multiple people. So we're going to be burdened with that. Right now, the county operates it, but the state pays them for it. Mm-hmm. Once the next bridge is done, each successive bridge project, we get the keys. It's our bridge. And so we're going to get stuck with that. So to your point, what bridge do we want to own and operate for the future? Do we want an extra $160,000 just in operating costs?
I don't.
Not the replacement costs. Yeah, exactly. So
I want a bridge that doesn't have to open and close all the time, and that doesn't need a person sitting there monitoring it. I want a bridge that No matter how tall the mast is on your boat, you can either lower it and go under it, or you can not have a mast and go under it, but I want a bridge that does not need to be opened and closed. We have done this for far too many years, and it's ridiculous.
So this is where we're at. So we'll
see.
Probably within the next, I'm going to guess 18 months, we're going to finally have to give the state some preference. State still makes the call, but the council did not give a preference several years ago, and then the state backed off on doing it, at least at that time. But we knew that day of reckoning was going to come back, and we're within 18 months of having to make that decision again.
More money, more money, more money. Where's it all coming from?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. How's the relationship these days, Mark, with respect to the landlords, tenants, and City of Oshkosh? And I'm thinking in terms of, the rental housing advisory board that was put together a number of years ago, and that ticked off so many landlords, and a couple of them ran for city council, and one I took apart pretty good. Where's the relationship at?
Well, the inspection program has not been very successful because of the rules that were written at the state level that really prevent staff from taking any initiative. It's been our hands are tied. It's got to be the tenant making the request, and if the tenant is unaware of the rules or is fearful of any kind of repercussions for doing that, they won't call. And there's a lot of misunderstanding about that. So that's ended. I mean, our demand for inspections is very low.
Is the advisory board, is that defunct now too?
No, it still exists, okay. But I think they're trying to say, what else can we do, knowing how our hands are tied in this area. So I think they're trying to engage the the landlord community a little more, say, what more can we do? Because, bad housing is bad for good landlords too, because it's putting the bad landlords at an unfair advantage over the good landlords, and trying to do that. I think we still got a long way to go. The state has just tied our hands on this so severely that we're trying to educate people on, you have a right to clean, safe housing. And and I know you know good landlords. I'm probably looking at one right now.
I got out of that game.
You got out of that game. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But you know what I mean.
But I was.
There are good landlords. There are good landlords,
yep.
and that's not to besmirch those folks, but they call them bad actors. But it's like, how do you address the bad actors and the good actors? And it's really we're continuing discussions to say, what more can we do? Because we know we still have some substandard rental housing, and I think it's unfair to the good landlords. So hopefully appeal to them to say, we do need some standards that are done, and how can we enforce it within the rules that the state's kind of tied our hands on.
Yeah. Well, maybe the city, maybe that board or that commission, whatever you want to call it, that advisory board, maybe one of the things that they can do, since we have so many students in this city who are renting houses and apartments in and around the campus, maybe that committee can do some education, get together with the university and actually do some educating, letting them know that, hey, look, these are your rights, and, a landlord can't retaliate against you for demanding that you have some safe, clean, and respectable housing. I mean, nobody deserves to live in the Taj Mahal, but you don't want something that's going to be, where you've got heat that is failing, and things like that. So it's got to be safe and in working order.
I think the committee is still wrestling with how to go through those very things. So I'm hopeful that they will work with the landlord community and try to create some common ground.
Okay. I want to go back to water for a minute. You're probably thinking, oh, God, Cheryl, get over it. But I did notice that there's something being done with the water tower out in and around the frontage road by 9th Avenue.
Yeah.
What's going on there? Are they repainting it?
That's one of the $250,000 painting jobs.
Oh, my God. Again?
But that one hasn't been done since 1990, so it's been almost 30 years now.
But it looked good. I mean, I didn't, I realize I'm looking at it from down below, but I didn't see where the word Oshkosh was falling off the side of the tower or anything like that. I mean, what prompted this being done right now? It's
both internal and external painting. So even the inside of the tower has to be painted so that any flaking, the least bit of flaking,
gets in the water supply.
We can't have that. You and I, if there's a tiny bit of flake on a wall in your house, it's not that big a deal. With water, it's a very big deal. Okay. So that was overdue. We were under orders from the DNR to get it done, so we did it. But it originally got held up because there were some hawks in the upper reaches, and they're a protected species. So we had to send the painters home, and so that's why we're doing it. We normally don't paint so late in the season, but we had to because we had to wait until the little little baby hawks were
oh my God,
had flown the coop.
So you had to wait for them to fly away. Then you couldn't just replace them, relocate them.
No,
interesting.
Yeah. I learned way too much.
Well, that's a new one.
Yeah,
I do too.
We had great little photos, but the little I know eagles are eagles. I don't know what hawks are called, but anyway, there were little baby hawks sitting in there, and it's
eaglets, maybe.
Yeah.
Hawklets, I don't know.
I know it's eaglets, but I don't know what the hawk is. But so we had to wait until that was done. Normally, your painting job is done in August, and here we are, and this is not the best weather. This wet fall weather is not the
When's
best
it going to
atmosphere.
be done?
It's got to be. From a practical standpoint, it really has to get done by the end of November, or by the end of October, by November 1.
Okay, all right. It was a fascinating thing to look at. I saw all of these wires hanging down, and I thought, what's going on there? So when it's
it's like a big skirt that they put around the tower so that it doesn't spray over and hit you and me driving by in a car.
Yeah. So when we talk about $250,000 or $300,000, that covers both interior and exterior painting?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that makes me feel a little bit better, Mark.
Yeah.
Anyway. So I guess this is it's not a practical sounding question, but I am curious about this. When they're repainting a tower, where do they go with the water that's in that tower already? Where do they go with that in order to move, the water out in order to paint it?
We typically drain the tower. There's a process to do it, but we drain it. So we've got to be careful about that because of the time of year, especially when we do it in the summer, because the demand for water is greatest in the summer. So we just drain the tower.
And where does it go? Where do you put it?
It goes to the other towers, and we are short on our storage. So that's the fire department has to be very involved in that process because the water towers exist mostly to address fire demand for what's called a 3-hour fire. Peak demand in the hottest day when you and I are drinking water and watering our lawns, and we get a major fire. That's how the whole standard is developed for how much water capacity we need. So our water capacity was below what we needed. So we had to make sure that all our other water towers were filled so that we could paint the inside of that. So that was the easy part. Draining is actually the easy part because at least you're inside and Mother Nature isn't messing with you. Outside, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature.
Yeah. You know what I would like to see, Mark? Like you need one more thing on your plate to do. But I would really like to see you or somebody do, I know that you put out weekly newsletters to the council and so forth, and I know that we can all look at those things. But maybe, put out something on the website that, see that little factoid right there. You know, that, hey, we've got to move water from this tower to these other towers. The fire department's got to be involved. Hey, these hawks were there and we had to get, because I don't think anybody picked up on that. I don't recall seeing anything in the media about that.
I thought we did a little bit on social media, but you know.
Well,
but
social media, yeah, but I mean, I'm talking about the local newspapers.
Yeah.
Nobody picked up on that. Maybe nobody even knew.
Yeah.
But you see, I think it would go a long way to help people better understand, you know, your tax dollars hard at work. Here's why this kind of costs what it does. I didn't know that you were doing the interior as well as the exterior. When you floated that number to me a few years back, I thought that was just for the exterior.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was interior. So, you know, do a little, here's your tax dollars hard at work, or here's why this happens the way it happens. I remember when I was a kid growing up, my parents bought the World Book Encyclopedia. And with that came a set of books called Childcraft. And I got to tell you, they were some of the best books that my brother and I ever got to read, because they talked about all these different things, how things work, why things work as they do. It never went into about water towers, but but you know, you could do that.
But you're dating us because I know exactly what you're talking about.
Weren't they great books? And but see, I think that would go a long way to help people understand better why things are the way they are.
Well, that's why I'm not just sucking up to you because this is your show, but
that's
why I enjoy those questions are great because you know, I view anything with public information as an ongoing improvement process. We are constantly, so, you know, taking things like that, it's like we need to, the simple stuff. I mean, I am always careful about not getting too much into acronyms because, you know, what's ARPA, American Rescue Plan Act, and if I start talking in government speak, people are they glaze over.
Yeah.
But simple questions like that, you know, why is the water tower taking so long? Oh, it's inside as well as outside. I love hearing those things because it's like, I got to make a note of that and be ready for telling the story. Continue to tell the story.
You ask me for a list. I'll give you a list of things you can write about.
But we've only got, we've barely covered your list here.
We've barely covered it, but I'll tell you, we do have to get to this one because it has to do with channels 2 and 10 that are our cable access channels. And, you know, this show is out on YouTube, but I think it's important for people to understand why channels 2 and 10 are no longer being seen, and how long it might take before they're seen again, and what they should do, you know, who they need to contact and so forth to put pressure on Charter, Spectrum, whatever name they're calling themselves this week, to, you know, get this problem solved. It was solved for about a week, maybe even just a few days, and then it went
I think we got back to it. We're back on now,
are we?
But it's with a temporary fix. It's temporary equipment. Long term, we're going to need it. When they get the final equipment, it'll probably be an hour or two that it will be out. But I was pretty upset about it. Now, selfishly, part of it is because I use Spectrum, but I think it pointed out that there's a demand. There were people calling saying, "Where's my Gov TV? Where's my Life TV?"
Where's Cheryl Hentz?
Yeah, exactly. But you know, there's so many things that people rely on that for. So it pointed out a lot of this is at the federal level. They've essentially said, "Well, this, you know, I don't think people appreciate public access, government access TV." But when they don't get it, they where is it? You know, it's funny because I see, you know, I'll be at a grocery store. Oh gosh, I saw you on this program or that, Cheryl's program, city manager report, council meeting, and they really appreciate that because they want to be informed about this stuff. And you know, and all we do, we still don't do enough, which is the point we talked about earlier. It's like we're always needing to inform the public better. It really is a federal issue. Quite honestly, Cheryl, I think we do better than most. I think our our studios, our support for
yes,
public
of course,
access.
But we're talking about Spectrum, and I don't mean to interrupt.
No,
but
that's okay.
I know time's running short, and I want to make this point. It is a piece of equipment that is not owned by the city. It's a piece of equipment that is owned by Spectrum, whatever, Charter. They're all the same company, so I guess it doesn't really matter what the name is. But it's a piece of equipment that they own, that they are trying to tell Oshkosh Media, and probably your office too, that is going to take 4 to 6 months to get to make that fix.
Yeah.
And
So
that's ridiculous.
They gave us temporary equipment to bridge this thing, but
That was real temporary when it lasts a week or less.
Yeah, well,
and now we're back on again. How long have we been back on now?
Maybe a week to 10 days, something like that.
Wow,
yeah,
they're getting better.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
well.
it was still, I don't think there's an appreciation for public and government access TV like there was a few years back, and I'm not sure if it's because they think that, well, we've got all these other vehicles, but there are people in our community that rely on this.
Yes.
And the whole idea was they're able to use our right-of-way for all these purposes. All we're asking in return is that you give us one of your channels, or two, in our case, 2 channels, to essentially keep our citizens informed.
And get your equipment fixed. You
Yeah.
know, get your equipment fixed, Charter/Spectrum. I mean, you're a gazillion dollar a year company and you can't get a piece of equipment, you know, to take care of this problem. It's just, I don't know, it defies logic to me. But I will say this, if people do call up and complain about it, they could probably, they have to demand credit though on their bill. And Spectrum will probably give you some credit. I know they did me. Of course, I can complain better than some people. But, you know, I mean, when you are paying for X number of channels and some of those channels aren't there, then you should no longer have to pay the full price. And so I encourage people to call Spectrum and complain.
You keep doing that.
Well, I don't need to. I've done it.
Yeah.
I got my credit. But I will continue to tell people that I think that they should. Okay, a couple other things real quickly. Let's talk about the 41 corridor, like out where Rogan Shoes is. What's happening with that airport overlay area?
Well, that's a slow process that has to go through FAA and different rules, but we know that we need to get certain areas, especially where Rogan's and the car dealership that does the custom cars, as well as the mine shaft, to be able to expand that area, because it would expand if they had the capability of doing so. So I don't know the full answer, but I know it's still going through a process that locally they have to look at it, and then they have to make sure the FAA is okay with it. The FAA is always concerned that, I believe they're more concerned about noise complaints than anything else, but they usually will talk about safety.
Wait, the FAA is they're concerned about noise complaints?
They always get noise complaints.
Well, how about the noises that come from EAA? I'm not knocking EAA, but those big bombardiers or whatever, when those damn huge bursts of bombs were going off, scaring people, upsetting people's animals, the elderly, people with PTSD, that's not an area of concern, but what goes into a building?
It's only
there might be noise complaints?
It's those approaches and takeoff areas that's their concern. What happens on the site is a different issue.
Wow.
Yeah.
Such
Amazing.
lunacy. Not what you're saying, but see, this is just government at its worst. There's too much crap involved, you know? Okay, so let's see.
I'm just delivering the answers. You don't shoot
I
the
know.
messenger, and that's why I come back.
I promise if I shoot the messenger, it won't have a loud boom, because we don't want to upset anyone at the FAA. How about the Pioneer Inn property? How about that? What's going on there?
You know, we have a local owner, and he is still looking for different ideas. I'd love to tell you, I said the biggest lie I've told in my 13 years is we're a couple weeks away from hearing something, and I'm not going to say that, but we are actively, I was just talking to the developer, or the owner of the property, and he's looking for people that want to do something. Mr. Dumpke is in love with the marina, really wants to do the marina. The island itself, I think he wants the southern part of the island to be something that is compatible with the marina, but he's looking for other ideas. But they got to work together. He just can't put something there and leave the island alone, so he's trying to figure out something to work together. As you said, office buildings and that are not in vogue right now, so different uses, getting the right mix of uses is a tough sell right now.
Yeah.
But do we do residential? Do we do commercial? Do we do restaurants type of thing? I've heard a bunch of great ideas, but they're not enough to get somebody to say, I'm going to invest in that. So hang tight. Please be patient.
Okay. Well.
Yeah. You have to, yeah.
How many decades?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's been 2 decades.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's kind of silly. Okay, so you actually had touched on this reimbursement for private lead service line replacement, so that's one I can cross off my list.
Yeah, let Public Works know if you're interested. Any new streets, we're gonna tell you we need to do it, but we're gonna offer it up. But if you're doing anything at your house anyway, yeah, give us a call. We'll be happy to help.
Okay, and so it's $1,500 that you can offer them to help offset whatever their cost might be.
We cover half the cost up to $1,500. So as long as you're under $3,000, half of it will cover.
Okay. There's one other thing that I noticed on the city's website, and that's something called the Oshkosh Micro Enterprise Program. It's forgivable loans of up to $7,500 to assist micro enterprise businesses that may have been affected by COVID.
And primarily women-owned businesses.
Okay.
This was an area that we knew was a challenge. So our friends at Greater Oshkosh Economic Development Corporation, our new community development director, Kelly Nyforth, have worked to develop this program, and we found the funding for it, and a $7,500 forgivable loan. So essentially it becomes a grant. You reach a certain level of progress, success, and it'll be written off.
What is considered a micro enterprise business?
I don't know all the definitions, and I'd say go back to the website, but it's a small startup business.
Okay,
it's really, it's typically less than 10 employees.
Okay.
So it's really,
Is it different from like an incubator business, or is it kind of along the same
lines?
lines?
It could be an incubator business, but it doesn't have to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
so if you are an aspiring businesswoman who's looking for some assistance to get going, call Greater Oshkosh EDC, and they'll be happy to help you.
Okay.
We got a new director there as well, Tricia Rathermel. She's wonderful, and I think she'll serve your needs.
Okay, great. Just real quickly then, where are we at with boards and commissions? Is there still a lack of interest in people serving on those, or are we in pretty good shape now?
I think if you talk to the mayor, it's an ongoing issue.
Mm-hmm.
I think she's been very big on doing recruitment and everything. There's always some vacancies. My suggestion for anybody is if you're remotely interested, put your name in, and if something comes up, you don't be surprised you get a call from the mayor. The mayor, that's the mayor's realm where she does all the appointments, and we got a new program for her so she can track it, and she's very good about calling people who have expressed interest.
She is, and I mean, people are always impressed when they get a phone call from Lori Palmieri, because she truly takes time to, she takes interest in people, and she takes time to listen to them. All right, we're out of time. Speaking of time.
Wow.
I covered most of the list.
Well, that's pretty good.
We got through most of it, so I'm impressed with that.
Well, you got to catch up with a lot of people, I know that, but give me a holler when you're ready to talk again.
I will. It'll probably be early part of next year or something like that, maybe in the spring.
Sounds good.
Because I'd like to do this twice a year.
I know, but we end up doing it maybe every 9 months, so don't.
I know.
You know my number.
I do. And you know mine. So anyway, that's going to do it for us. We will see you next time. Thanks to the crew and to Mark and to all of you. Until we meet again, you keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.